Hey everyone, today I'm going to be tying the brown trout parr on a jig. The hook that I'm using is a Mustad on a 1/4 ounce jig. The thread I'm using is a Semperfli Nano silk 12/0 white and 18/0 white. The eyes are 6mm 3D orange dragon eyes and 85-pound test monofilament to connect the eyes. Take a section of monofilament about 3/4 of an inch long and place a clamp in the center. Melt the exposed ends with a lighter and flatten both sides. Place a drop of 5-minute epoxy on each of the flat sides and add the eyes. Let it completely dry before you use it. Start the thread behind the jig head about 1/4 of the way back. Wrap a base and trim the tag. Next, secure the 3D eyes from underneath the hook by the monofilament by wrapping figure eights, whip finish, and add head cement. Next, tie in the tan polar fiber underneath the hook starting at the eyes and along the straight portion of the hook. Then add the brown shimmer fringe on the opposite side. Next, add the yellow polar fiber on top of the hook starting behind the eyes, slightly longer than the tan polar fiber. Next, add the brown polar fiber slightly longer than the yellow polar fiber. Build up the thread, trim the excess around the eyes, whip finish, and add head cement to the threaded area. Next, split the thread, wax both sides, add light orange ice dub loosely, add the dubbing twister, double over the thread and spin to secure the dubbing. Brush out the dubbing and switch over to a hackle plier and wrap along the threaded area, pulling the fibers back with your fingers to the base of the eyes. Secure and trim the excess and brush out the dubbing. Next, add the tan polar fiber from underneath the hook, slightly shorter than the previous wing, then add the same wing for the sides. Then add the brown polar fiber on top, slightly longer than the tail wing. Trim the excess around the eyes, build up the thread, whip finish, and add head cement to the wraps. Next, split the thread, wax both sides, and add the orange ice dub loosely. Add the dubbing twister, double over the thread, and spin to secure the dubbing. Brush out the dubbing and switch over to a hackle plier. Wrap the dubbing in behind and in between the eyes and secure by the thread in front of the eyes. Trim the excess. Build up the thread, whip finish, and brush out the dubbing. Next, tie in the brown polar fiber on top of the hook in front of the eyes, slightly shorter than the previous wing. Then tie in the yellow polar fiber from underneath the hook. Next, tie in the black polar fiber on top, build up the thread, whip finish, and trim. Next, take the same thread and secure all the fibers, top, bottom, and the sides in behind the eyes. A dozen or so wraps. Trim the tag and whip finish. Next, take a single strand of orange flash, fold it over the thread and secure it along the side of the wing and trim it, shorter than the main wing. Repeat on the opposite side and trim the flash even with the other. Whip finish and trim. Take the red thread and wrap it over the white collar, whip finish and trim. Add head cement to the wrap. Next, trim the excess wing material sticking out past the eyes on a taper towards the jig head. Next, start the 18-aught thread in front of the eyes and trim the tag. Split the thread, wax both sides, and add hot orange ice dub loosely. Add the dubbing twister, double over the thread and spin to secure the dubbing. Brush out the dubbing and switch over to a hackle plier. Wrap the dubbing tight in front of the eyes and going forward edge to edge to the halfway point. Secure and trim the excess, build up the thread and brush out the dubbing. Next, take another segment of white polar fiber and tie it underneath the hook slightly shorter than the previous wing. Next, take a portion of the black polar fiber and secure it on top of the hook, so it's slightly longer than the previous black polar fiber. This gives the fly an overall taper. Next, prepare a small segment of dyed orange and yellow rabbit strip with the hide attached and secure it underneath the hook as a throat. Next, prepare 2 Cree grizzly hackle tips. Measure slightly shorter than the longest part of the top wing, left and right. Flatten the stems and secure on each side above the eyes. Trim the excess wing, stems, and rabbit strip on a taper in behind the jig head. Build up the thread, whip finish and trim. Add the black thread to cover the white, whip finish and trim. And add thin head cement. Remove the fly from the vise and add the Parr marking, both brown and red permanent marker. Finally, add the final coat over the head. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and hit the like button to see more fly tying videos.